million for drilling, and they start already drilling, and the bore was broken, and 10 million is gone. So they don't have any money anymore. So this is a kind of risk that has to be taken by the project developers in geothermal, and that's why the tariff actually should be quite, let's say, sufficient to cover such a risk, unless government would take the risk for the drilling. That is actually a plan, but is not easy to implement. So on large-scale project, I think I've seen, I've been involved in renewable energy for years, and I've seen actually that the current tariff, current policy should be already sufficient, but not for the small-scale projects. So especially for off-grid project that let's say only have to develop 100 kilowatt, 200 kilowatt, or below 1 mega. So this is the project that is really needed by people outside Java. So this is the policy that need to be. I think when we are talking about just transition again, this is the policy that need to be taken by the government. How can government really provide sufficient policy covering this island? So as you know, Indonesia as island country, then we cannot really today provide the same access of energy to everyone, not yet. And that's the big challenge for us actually when we talk about just transition.
That's a lot of food for us to think about, really. I wonder if Putra wanted to comment on that. You sure? You look like, okay, maybe just write down notes later on. No, yeah, because that's a really important question, right? You know, how do we ensure that, your coal retirement doesn't also then exacerbate economic disparities? And that's a big question here in Indonesia especially. I wanted to just turn to the Q&A just because I know we don't have a lot of time left. Can we just shine the questions up on the screen? Just so we can also then the Q&A questions, the questions that are coming in. No questions? No questions. Really? Anyone? Anyone on the floor want to take any questions for any of the speakers here? Okay. Maybe we can have do you want to shout your question? Do you want to just? Yeah. No. Just shout your question.
Myself?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I have questions, some question.
Thank you. Thank you,
Papa.
She was like, I'm not there.
Yeah, just a question, because it's already mentioned by Papa that Indonesia is archipelago countries. So how do you think that in the next, maybe not too far, let's say 3 to 5 years, what should the government doing to achieve, to make the equal, at least, equal for the energy sector in all over the let's say 3T area, something like that. Yeah, something like that. Thank you. You know 3T area? Yeah.
John, you want to take this one?
Sure. I think there's a few things. I think definitely right now some of these areas are reliant on expensive and volatile in terms of price diesel power. I think the government can continue what it is working on doing right now, which is to promote maybe not entirely the replacement, but at least the displacement of some of that diesel power with renewables combined with storage. This is challenging. You know, it's going to be a process in terms of arriving at the right price signals to incentivize that while also keeping it affordable. Storage is not cheap, but I think the long-term benefits are considerable, and I definitely applaud PLN and the government on recognizing the need to do that. I think, to the extent that supplying power to some of these areas requires more subsidies. There might be parts of the country. I mean, I go back to my point from businesses that could be taking other measures like efficiency but yeah, I won't dwell on that too much more. Finally, I think the RUPTL reflects this, a greater emphasis on strengthening Indonesia's grid. I think the RUPTL definitely has calls for more investment in grid infrastructure, which is really good and will help Indonesia to better integrate not only smaller islands on its periphery, but even just areas like Sulawesi and Sumatra and Kalimantan that are not fully, the grid is not fully developed. So that will help bring power to more areas and also help to promote the integration of renewable energy in the power mix.
Thank you for typing that question, John. I hope that answered your question. Now we see questions coming up here, and we're going to go to the first one. You can also vote for the questions here. I'm going to take the first one. What is the main cause of the lack of bankable projects? Is it the lack of regulatory certainty? Paul, are you going to take this one?
Not necessarily that is because of the lack of regulatory framework. As I mentioned before, the framework is already there, and there are already projects in the past. But the main reason why we have not seen many projects now, it has to do with the way, let's say, the procurement for the renewable energy project is done. So, for example, in the past, before 2017 actually, if I would have a renewable energy potential, then I would come to PLN and say, okay, I have the potential here. And then PLN will check. If there would be demand, then they could sign a kind of MOU with this project developers. And then if there is a large-scale project, then they would normally do a kind of negotiations with PLN, and then in the negotiation they also invite their let's say, bankers to participate in the negotiations. So, the way the procurement was done in the past actually helped to make the project to be bankable. So, but the implication of that way, the way of that procurement was done in the past, and you can see actually now in all of the renewable or all of the coal power plant or fossil-based, let's say, projects, their PPA is really strong, very strong that it would be difficult for PLN actually to do renegotiations. So it's related to the policy, for example, that has been implemented by government back in 2022. When there was a kind of, when government issued the law number 7, 2021, on the harmonization of the taxation regulation, one part of the law is actually about the carbon tax. So, and then part of this carbon tax, the Minister of Finance said that a pilot project should be the implementation of, let's say, emission trading in the coal power plant. So, what the problem with that, let's say, new regulations is actually because in the PPA between PLN and IPP, there is a clause so-called government force majeure. And government force majeure means if there is a new policy implemented by government, then the policy actually costs the increase of the cost, operational cost of the power plant, then this cost could be passed through to PLN. Then if it is passed through to PLN, then at the end, PLN will pass it through to government, then at the end, the new policy will increase the subsidy. And PLN would not be willing to renegotiate this term because there is really strong bankable project, and that's also one of the reasons why this financial institution actually were willing to finance this project. So it's not about the lack of regulation, but it's more about how the procurement is done.
Thank you so much, Pak, for taking that question. We don't have a lot of time, but I'm just going to take one more question from the screen. What do you want to take the first question up there, the one that's 4 thumbs up? Do you think Danatara will reinvest in key RE pipeline projects? Richard? Sure. Go ahead.
It's a shot at the dark, but I think it's a bit too early to talk about Danatara. But let me start with one numbers: 33%. That is the amount of PLN revenue coming from state subsidies and compensation. That number has crept up from 29% the year before, which means that the company itself is not really in a stable condition. So the positive move about moving from Danatara is that it's moving into a new home, hopefully less political. Hopefully they can see it in a broader, more flexible, because they're less bounded. And based on what they're disclosing, making investment vehicles, partnering with other countries, whether in the West, Middle East, and others, that may present a new opportunity. I think it's a bit too early, but I think one thing we need to keep in mind is that it's still the same PLN, right? You're just moving it into different places, but hopefully it can bring a bit of flexibility. So the opportunity for Danatara to intervene in how they invest, I think, is a bit greater compared to the prior constraint. So let me stop there. I think that's a bit of a shot in the dark, but that's my best shot. Thank you.
Thank you. You can grab Putra later for further elaboration on that answer. But with that, I'm just going to pose one more final question to the speakers, because there's coffee and tea outside, which I'm sure everyone is quite looking forward to. But one more question. We talked about bold being actionable earlier on in our speeches. Given the urgency of Indonesia's energy transition, what is one bold and actionable step that you believe will accelerate progress the most in the next 12 months? Not 3 to 5, 12 months. Maybe I'll start with Jika.
Yeah, thank you. The one thing that I can think about is Indonesia already have a blended finance vehicle. One of it is the ETM country platform, which is mandated by the Ministry of Finance to mobilize finance for energy transitions. So the bold move would be to optimize how these ETM country platform work, because it can work cross-sector. It is backed by the government facilities. That can also blend the public finance, conventional finance, grants, TA, and also bring up the philanthropic capital into it. So I think by having this optimizing ETM country platform, the one that we already have now, could be a game changer, especially if this can also send up signals to the market that the country platform can scale up the financing, can provide the risking instruments, for instance, by providing the TA and stuff. This could be, the easiest, the lower hanging fruit for the next 12 months. That's what I can think.
Thank you so much, Jika. And John?
Trying to think of something that I didn't already say. I think maybe more clear and more binding energy efficiency standards for larger commercial and industrial customers would be helpful. Of course, staying within the realm of things that are realistic, but establishing clear reporting standards and maybe giving sort of a transition period, but establishing just very clear standards for energy efficiency to send a signal to the market that it's time to move in that direction, because there are reporting requirements for certain size of customers, but I'm not sure that they've achieved the intended effect quite in the way that we hope. So I think that there's more that can be done there, and I think it would be ultimately beneficial to the industrial sector in Indonesia to become more competitive.
And Pablo?
Yeah, as I just mentioned before, one of the very important issue now when it comes to the on-grid power, then the most important thing now is actually to look at how the procurement will be done. How can it be done faster and regular? How can we do procurement not only for a single project, but a as a quota. And PLN actually has started with that, but need to be done in more regular so that, let's say, the investor will come and also prepare for, that they know that next the procurement will be coming. That's first. But the second thing is also that I need to mention. I mentioned quickly about the ETS, the ETS that has been implemented in the power sector, but it has to be implemented in economic-wide, not only in the power but also in industry and so on, because we have to look at the CBAM that will be effective by 26, and we are not only talking about EU that will do that 26, but also UK will do that. We don't know whether other countries also will implement the same policy next future. Thank you.
Thanks, Papa. And Putra to wrap us up.
Yeah, Papa already stole mine, so, but let me try again. If the president can say in the next 3 months, these are the list of the projects that will be awarded in the next 12 months, that's the biggest win Indonesia can get. Really. Everybody say procurement, project pipeline. We really need that top line commitment. Sure, we got the UPTL, we got the Danata, everything is out there. We just need to get, this will happen within the next 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Putra. And with that, don't worry, all your insights will be put into our insights report. So we will definitely be presenting this to all the attendees as well. Hopefully that gets to those who need to read that the most. But with that, thank you so much, Putra, Paul, and John, and Chica as well for being here. Thank you all for being so engaging as well. I'm going to pass the time over to Karina, but I think she wants us to take a picture first.
That's right, Megan, you read my mind. If we could gather just center stage right here and take a photo for our very first panel discussion of the afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in giving another warm round of applause for our panelists and also our moderator for the first panel discussion of the afternoon. Once again, thank you, Megan, for being our moderator, and to our panelists as well for that insightful and fruitful session, and for your sharing on the complexities, economic challenges, and opportunities in Indonesia's energy transition. Once again, I'd like to remind everyone a few housekeeping items to go through. You will find here a QR code on the badges, but if not, also on the screen right here that links to our program, and another one for your commute. Please take the time today to scan this QR code and let us know how you came to this event so that EcoBusiness can take this into account in its carbon emissions accounting. Our hashtags, once again as a reminder for the event, are hashtag Unlocking Capital, hashtag UCFS 2025, and hashtag EB Conversations. And if you're on social media, do tag us at EcoBusiness, at UNEPFI, and our partners as well to get the best reach for your points of view. And as Megan have mentioned earlier, it is now time for a quick coffee break. Please enjoy the refreshments that's served outside. And we will convene and resume our agenda for today in just 20 minutes for our second panel discussion of the day. Enjoy.